Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to discuss if the Dodge Viper is a dangerous vehicle. For anyone new to the channel, I purchased my budget dream car in late 2019. I bought a 2004 Dodge Viper SRT10, and it was the cheapest one with a clean title and reasonably low miles in the country. Before I bought it, I obviously did a lot of research into it, and everyone online was like, "Oh, it's so dangerous. Are you insane? You're gonna kill yourself. I hope you have life insurance. If you do, write it out to me. I've heard they have almost no airbags. If you have a wife, she's gonna be a widow after you buy that car. There's no traction control or stability control. You're gonna hurt yourself. Be careful. What are you doing? Are you crazy?" I think you get the point. People think it's a dangerous car. And then even after I bought the car, a lot of family, friends, co-workers who found out I purchased the car had the same concerns. Now, I'm filming this well after I bought the car. So like I said, I bought the car in late summer of 2019. I have owned the car for more than 6 months. I put more than 1,000 miles on it. I didn't want to do this video like week one because I wouldn't have really had a good feel for the car, its capabilities, and kind of the quirks of driving it yet. But now I've actually racked up a decent number of miles on it. I've pretty much driven it every chance I've gotten to. And at this point, I've got a pretty solid understanding of the car, what it likes, what it doesn't like, and whether or not it's a complete death trap like everyone seems to claim. So the quick answer, is it dangerous? Yes and no. It's as safe or as dangerous as you make it. And the best way that I've been able to describe it to people is that it's effectively like owning a really big motorcycle. Now, a quick step back here. My background, for anyone who doesn't know or hasn't seen any of my older videos, is track riding on motorcycles. My very first motorcycle was a 1993 Suzuki GSX 600, which is also known as the Suzuki Katana. And then from there, I've worked up and I currently have a CBR 1000RR, which, if you're not aware, is very fast. I've also owned an R1, I had a ZX6R, I've ridden a number of Ducatis, and I've driven a number of cruisers and other things as well, but I've got a pretty good feel for different motorcycles. Even your average Harley will out-accelerate your average Corvette, and the 1000cc displacement bikes like the one that I currently have and that I've had before, they are disgustingly fast, even for motorcycles. For point of reference, my current bike weighs around 450 pounds with a full tank of gas, and it has 174 horsepower from the factory. And I've already done an exhaust and a couple other minor tweaks, so that number's a little bit higher, but the power to weight ratio on those, even with a rider on the back, is absolutely insane. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm not a professional rider. I have not set any lap records. I don't think I am going to set any lap records in the future. Even so, I have clocked a 0 to 60 time in the 2.3 second range on a motorcycle. So when I say they are disgustingly fast, I mean they are disgustingly fast. Now, a lot of newer motorcycles are starting to get anti-lock brakes, they're starting to get traction control, but my current motorcycle is a 2006 model year, and all the ones I've owned previously have been even older than that. And especially for motorcycles of that age, anti-lock brakes weren't a thing, traction control was not a thing, there's really no driver's aids. Even beyond that, if you're in the event that you are in an accident, it doesn't matter if you're not at fault, it doesn't matter if it's the other guy's responsibility or they did something stupid. If you're involved, you're the one in danger, and there's no airbags, there's no seatbelts, there's nothing like that to protect you. So the most probable outcome is that regardless of who's at fault, you're the one who's going to get hurt. This means that you're really dependent on your own skill and your own awareness to prevent you from getting injured in any way. For example, if you're on a motorcycle and you immediately jab to full throttle, or you immediately go slamming on the brakes, or you're mid-corner and you do one of those things, you're going to upset the suspension, the balance of the bike. Something is going to shift and something will break traction, and you're most likely going to slide out. The contact patch on a motorcycle is like somewhere between $1 and $50 in size, because even though the tire is smaller, it's also curved, so a very small portion of it is actually touching the ground at any time. So it's very easy to overcome the level of grip that your tire has, and in second and third gear, even on my 80 horsepower motorcycle, I could light up the tire if I just absolutely punched the gas and I didn't roll into it carefully. What it comes down to then is not only being aware of your own capability, but your vehicle's capabilities and the conditions that you're in. Is it cold outside? Is the ground cold? Or are your tires cold? Is there sand or gravel or painted lines anywhere on the surface? Is any of that going to affect your traction? These are all things that motorcyclists know very well can very quickly turn your day into a bad one. And honestly, having hit painted lines mid-corner, having lifted off and gotten a little bit of snap oversteer in the Viper, this is almost the most perfect analogy I can think of, because the Viper, without having traction control, without having stability control, and this being one of the first years ever of having anti-lock brakes, this is in almost every respect a motorcycle but with a full body around you. The Viper has always had the federal minimum number of airbags, so I have one for the passenger and one one for the driver. The earliest Vipers had no airbags at all because they weren't required yet. The lack of stability control and the lack of traction control means that if you smash the gas, even though you have these massive tires, there's just so much torque that they're probably gonna break loose, especially if you're mid-corner and you're asking the tires to hold you with lateral grip. In the same way, if you just suddenly lift off the throttle instead of slowly rolling out of it like you do on a motorcycle, it's gonna shift the weight of the car, it's probably gonna snap out, and there's no stability control to catch you, so you're dependent on your own reactions and as your own inputs as a driver, and you better have quick hands, otherwise it's going to come around on you. And I actually never found this part in any of my research before buying the car, and I never found this in anything ever, even as a Viper lover growing up, but the car is very prone to snap oversteer. So actually in one of my first times ever driving it, I lifted off mid-corner at, we'll say, a healthy speed, and even then I said, oh wow, there's some snap oversteer to this car.
Oh, a little bit of lift off oversteer there.
And fortunately, in that case, I had enough downforce and stuff to kind of plant me, but it was a little sketchy, and that was a time that I almost felt the traction break out a little bit, and that could have been a very bad situation to be in. And I'll link a video below that I found, and this is granted an earlier Viper, but it's the same issue where it's an owner who had this car for years, and he had a ton of track experience specifically with this car even, and even so, it still snap oversteered on him. I always thought this was a problem for like rear-engine Porsche 911 or like Toyota MR2s, but apparently it's also an inherent issue with the Viper. And they have what I've had referred to as the black ice effect, where you're going and you lift off and it suddenly feels like the back end is immediately on black ice. It just snaps out and you're just along for the ride. It doesn't matter what you do for steering input, you just can't catch the car, which I was not aware of before buying this car. That said, as long as you know how to control the throttle, both rolling into it and rolling out of it, as long as you know how to apply the brakes, that you don't immediately just go to full brakes, you kind of go like most of the way, let them settle, then go the rest of the way. It's a lot like a motorcycle in the sense that it's disgustingly fast, that you have to be aware of your environment, you have to be aware of the road conditions, and that if you do somehow mess up, or if someone around you messes up and hits you, there is no safety net. There is nothing necessarily to protect you from the mistakes that you've made or that somebody else has made. So you have to be sharp while riding this car. That's the purpose of the Viper, is it is this raw, like unfiltered vehicle that you have to be involved with. And as part of that is the sense of awareness that you have to have in the same way that you have to be aware when you're on a motorcycle. It can break tires loose, you can overbrake, you have to have good throttle control and brake control, and you can't just snap the steering in super hard unless you're expecting some serious consequences, kind of like a motorcycle. There is nothing to save you from doing something stupid, so if you do something stupid, it's going to do exactly what you want it to do, but there could be consequences for those actions. But that said, even with the Mustang GT that I have, that was about 420 horsepower, give or take, a lot of people get into those as their first like high power car because of the price point of them. That's why you see a lot of videos of Mustangs crashing online, is because these people haven't had sports cars before, they don't have proper throttle control, and they just mash the gas, and when something starts going screwy, they just stay in it, and then it just gets worse because they don't know what they're doing. So it's not just having a level of throttle control and a level of common sense that you don't just keep the throttle pinned when you're kind of in a hairy situation. It's also having a level of respect for the car and what the car can do, that you know the car's abilities probably exceed your own abilities, and that you shouldn't just go out and do stuff that is excessively stupid because your actions will have consequences. I personally don't think the Viper is the most dangerous car. Again, I'm coming from a motorcycle background. The throttle control is not new for me. The lack of stability control, the lack of traction control, none of this stuff is really new to me, and to have a full frame around me I think is more safe than having a motorcycle with none of that stuff and I'm just reliant on the leather gear I'm wearing. I've also had relatively high powered sports cars before. I'm kind of familiar with how that feels in a rear wheel drive car. So like I said, it's only as safe or as dangerous as you make it. If you're cutting through traffic, if you're doing really stupid stuff and hooning with it all the time, you're probably going to have a mistake sooner or later. If you're reasonably respectful of the car and you're only punching it when you're in a straight line or in good conditions or after the tires are warmed up, if you're aware that you have to warm the tires up, if you're conscious of road conditions, if you're doing the right things and you're always keeping awareness with the car, which it's very hard not to given how raw and how involved it is to drive the thing, you're probably going to be okay. And I think a lot of people label the car as a bad handling car because of the tendency to get out of control, because it doesn't have anything to catch you, because there's no safety nets. But genuinely, I don't think it is. I think it's really grippy and it's very low low to the ground and the tires are super wide, but on top of the tires being wide, the suspension geometry is good. It's just dialed in from a suspension standpoint, and the combination of the good suspension geometry with the really wide, really grippy tires, that thing can handle corners that are unreasonable for what should be capable on the corners that I've taken it on. It almost gives you a sense of confidence that it probably shouldn't, because there is no safety net, but it's very welcoming and it's very rewarding to push the car. And I think that's where it gets dangerous. So you always have to keep in your mind, like, yes, I've done something like this before and I've pushed this car before and I've cornered hard before, but are the conditions right now appropriate for pushing it just as hard? And that's where it gets you, is that sense of comfort could be the thing that stabs you in the back. That said, I think it does handle amazing. I think it's extremely capable in the right hands, but it has to be in the right hands. You have to have that level of respect for the car. Otherwise, it's going to treat you the same way you treat it. And when it does, like I said, federal minimum number of airbags, no side curtain airbags, but it's got a very wide door sill, so hopefully there's enough crumple zone there that the fiberglass will hopefully deflect some of the force before the tree that you're spinning into inevitably tries to take out your left arm. But there it is. I don't think the Viper itself is inherently dangerous. I just think the type of people who buy it, and I think the lack of respect for the car, could make it dangerous if you're not conscientious of these things and if you haven't dealt with any of these things before. I still love mine. I still plan to drive mine with a reasonable deal of enthusiasm and with spirited driving, and I did not buy this car to simply take it out and do a Sunday drive delicately every once in a while. I bought it to have some fun, and I plan to do that. So ultimately, is the Viper a dangerous car? No, it's not going to inherently kill you just because you look at it. It's only going to kill you if you're doing something that's outside of your capabilities, outside of the car's capabilities, or a combination of the two where you're not being respectful of one of the above, plus the level of grip the car has with the current conditions of the road. Also known as, it's still a motorcycle. Treat it like a motorcycle and you'll probably be fine. Don't drive it in the rain, don't drive it in slippery conditions. Be cautious in cold weather, be aware of road conditions, be aware of tire temperatures. Don't be stupid, and if anyone hits you, it's still going to hurt. That's gonna do it for now. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.